All right, we're back. Still on notes and their nomenclature, but before I explain the nomenclature of the black keys, the 5 black keys we have here, I have to introduce a concept called intervals. Notice we have 12 keys on the keyboard, 7 of which are white, 5 of which are black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everything you have left is a repetition of what you have in one octave. But for me to be able to explain the names of the black keys, I have to introduce a concept called intervals. Now, what is interval? An interval is simply the distance between two notes. Distance between two notes or distance between two pitches, right? So if we're on C, for instance, if we move from C to the immediate note above C, that will be a half step interval. So C to the immediate note above it is a half step, or you can call it a semitone interval. So it's either a half step or a semitone. Why is it a half step? Because we moved from one note to the immediate note above it, leaving no note in between. But if we move from one note, say C, to D, to the next note after it, leaving one note in between, that's a whole step interval. So it doesn't matter where you are on the keyboard. If you move from one note to another note, leaving a note in between them, it's called a whole step interval. I repeat, half step interval if you move from one note to another note and there's no note left in between both notes, that's a half step interval. But if you're moving from one note to another and there is a note left in between, that's a whole step interval. So everything we do on the keyboard is just a combination of whole steps and half steps. So right here we're on key C. From here to this will be a half step. From this to this will be a half step. From this to this will be a half step. From this to this a half step, and a half step, half step. It progresses like that. That sequence is what we call the chromatic scale. We're going to come to that in a little bit of time. But so right here we have movement from C to D will be a whole step interval. Why? Because we left a note in between. From D to E will be a whole step interval because we left a note in between. So right now from this to this will be what? Guess it. Whole step, right? I'm sure you guess right, because there is a note in between. So that's it for intervals. Meet in the next class.